Hi, welcome back to 5th grade Green Math. I'm your instructor. I'm your green instructor. This is lecture 4 on subtraction. The objectives: understand subtraction at the most basic level. Know how to subtract decimal numbers. Know what a geothermal system is. Counting is more fundamental than subtracting. Subtracting is just a quick way of counting backwards. When we subtract, we are either memorizing the difference between two numbers, or we are counting in our heads or on our fingers. I hope that you are not counting or subtracting on your toes. Subtraction is counting backwards. Memorizing the difference of two numbers, for example, 13 subtract 5 gives us a difference of 8. Memorizing the difference is not fundamental, but starting at 13 and counting backwards or down 5 times or 5 units is fundamental. You could certainly represent this subtraction on a number line, just like we did in the lecture on addition. So why don't we go ahead and do that? Here is our number line, and let's put 0 right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and let's just put one more, 14. Okay, so subtract 8 from 13. So we start at 13 and we count backwards by 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We end up on 8. So you see now, and hopefully you appreciate the fact that subtracting is just a quick way of counting backwards. Let's look at quarters and dollars. We have a problem. An apple and a peach at the supermarket cost a total of 86 cents. You gave the cashier 4 quarters. Each quarter is 25 cents. So that means that 4 quarters is 100 cents, which is $1. How much change should the cashier give you back? Again, we're going to use our array of squares to represent this situation. So again, 1 quarter is equal to 25 pennies. And if I have 4 quarters, that's 25 pennies plus 25 pennies plus 25 pennies plus 25 more pennies. Let's see, 5 plus 5 is 10, plus 5 is 15, plus 5 is 20. Write the 0 down and carry the 2. 2 plus 2 is 4, plus 2 is 6, plus 2 is 8, plus 2 is 10. So 4 quarters is equal to 100 pennies. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4 quarters, and that's 100 cents or 100 pennies. So let me erase all of this. Okay, here's our 4 quarters, which is the equivalent of $1. And we know that $1 is 100 pennies. Each square here, each one of these squares is 1 cent or 1 penny. Okay, so let's go ahead and subtract 86 cents from 100 cents or $1. So what we're going to do is you're going to put your, okay, so we're going to make it easy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Each row is 10 cents. So if I subtract off 8 of these rows, and each row is 10 cents, 8 times 10 is 80 or 80 cents. So if I start right here on 100, subtract off 10 cents, subtract off 20, subtract off 30 cents, minus 40 cents, minus 50 cents, minus 60 cents. Okay, let me see. Okay, let's start over. Start at 100, subtract off 10 cents, we are here. Subtract off another 10 cents, which is 20 cents, we are here. 30 cents, 40 cents, 50 cents, 60 cents, 70 cents. If we subtract off 80 cents, we end up on square 20. But we want to subtract 86 cents, so we have to subtract off another 6 pennies. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We end up on square 14. So 100 cents minus 86 cents is 14 cents or 14 pennies. Now let's do decimal subtraction without pictures. The last example was basically just proving to you that subtraction is just a quick way of counting backwards. Let us now subtract decimal numbers without pictures and without counting backwards. Subtracting decimal numbers without pictures is easy. When subtracting decimal numbers, we want all the decimal numbers to have the same number of digits to the right of the decimal point. This is the same requirement we had for adding decimal numbers. If the decimal numbers do not have the same number of digits to the right of the decimal point, then we add zeros until they do have the same number of digits to the right of the decimal point. Again, this was the same process that we used for adding decimal numbers. Here's the decimal number subtraction recipe. Step 1, write the numbers down, the decimal numbers down, and make sure the decimal points line up. Step 2, add zeros so that the decimal numbers all have the same number of digits to the right of the decimal point. Step 3, go ahead and place a decimal point in the answer before writing down any digits in the answer. Step 4, forget about the decimal point and subtract the numbers as if you were subtracting whole numbers. Now, one thing I forgot to mention in the addition lecture on adding decimal numbers, we can use the recipe for more than 2 numbers. The recipe works for any amount of numbers that we want to add. Okay, let's go back to our example that we showed using counting backwards, but this time let's subtract 86 cents from $1 without using pictures. So step 1, write the numbers down so that the decimal points line up. That's what we see here. One decimal point is up under the other one. Step 2, the numbers already have the same number of digits to the right of the decimal point. So step 2 and step 3 are combined here because step 2 again would have been adding zeros until all the numbers had the same number of digits to the right of the decimal point. So step 3, go ahead and place a decimal point right here in the answer before you actually place any numbers in your answer. And that's what we see here, a decimal point without any numbers. Step 4, forget about the decimal point and just subtract the numbers as if the numbers were just whole numbers. Okay, when we subtract, just like when we add, even with decimals, we always start at the right. Okay, so starting at the right here in the hundredths place, we see that 6 is greater than 0. So that means we got to borrow 1 from the tenths place. So because we borrowed 1 from the tenths place, we add that 1 to this 0, and this 0 becomes a 10. So we take this 0 and add the 1 or put the 1 in front of it that we just borrowed from the tenths place, and this 0 becomes a 10. 10 minus 6 is 4. The borrowing from the tenths place explains the 9 above the 0. Okay, so now when subtracting, if you borrow 1 from the column to the left and that left column has a 0, like right here, so we borrowed 1 from the tenths place, but there's a 0 here. You have to keep going to the left until you get to a non-zero digit. So we have to go way over here and borrow 1 for the tenths place so that we can borrow 1 for the hundredths place. So again, so here we have a 0. We want to borrow 1, but there's a 0 here. So we got to borrow 1 for the tenths place from the hundredths place, from the ones place. So we borrow 1 from the ones place, and then this 0 becomes a 10. 10 minus 1 is 9. Well, where did the 9 come from? Because remember, we had to give 1 to the tenths place. So that explains this 0 above this 1 in the ones place. Now 9 minus 8 is 1. And last of all, 0 minus 0 is 0. We are finished. So 100 cents minus 86 cents, or $1 minus 86 hundredths of a dollar is equal to 14 cents, or $0.14. The same result we got when we subtracted by counting backwards. That is all there is to subtracting decimal numbers. Okay, let's look at an alternative energy example. In the real world, now assume that you have a seemingly nutty uncle. Many people think they have nutty uncles. His geothermal system saves him an average of 230.46 kilowatt hours of electricity each month. A geothermal system is a system that uses the Earth's constant temperature to provide heat in the wintertime and coolness in the summer. And a kilowatt hour is just a measure of energy. It's how we measure our electrical energy use. Now, your uncle's kilowatt hour meter average reading before he installed his geothermal system was 826.5 kilowatt hours. What is his average reading after he installed his geothermal alternative energy system? First of all, you must, as a fifth grader or problem solver, you have to recognize this as a subtraction problem. Okay, explain how are we going to recognize this as a subtraction problem? Now, if we start looking at the problem statement, and we have to carefully look at key words, and this is something that you should do whenever you're solving a problem. Look for key words. The fact that we have before and after, those are strong words that gives us a hint about how to go about solving the problem. Now, we recognize that this is a subtraction problem because we know what his reading was at first, and we know that he's saving. So the fact that he's saving means that he's going to be using less than he used at first. And that's the key right there. After he installed this system, he's going to be using less because he's saving. Whenever you see the word less in a problem, that kind of gives you the indication that you're going to be doing a subtraction. To get the new average usage, we subtract the amount that he saves from the reading at first. So write the numbers down so that the decimal points line up. Step 1. So remember, he's using 826.5 before he installs his geothermal system. His geothermal system saves him 230.46 kilowatt hours. So we got to subtract that from how much he used before the system. Add a 0 after the 5 right here to make the top decimal number have the same number of digits to the right of the decimal point as the second number. Step 3, go ahead and place a decimal point in the answer right here before you actually place any numbers in your answer. Step 4, forget about the decimal points. Forget about the dollar symbols and treat the numbers as if they were whole numbers. And you already know how to do whole number subtraction. So at this point, you should be able to handle the problem. Okay, so just like with whole numbers, we start at the far right. Since 0 is less than 6, we borrow 1 from the tens place. So we have to borrow 1 from the tens place. We take that 1 and put it in front of this 0, and that makes a 10. 10 minus 6 is 4. Now, the fact that we borrowed 1 from the tens place, that made this 5. 5 minus 1 is 4. 4 minus 4 is 0. 6 minus 0 is 6. Now, okay. Now, what about in the tens place? 2 is less than 3. So we have to borrow 1 from the hundreds place. So the one that we borrow from the hundreds place, we put that in front of this 2 here, and that 2 becomes a 12. 12 minus 3 is 9. Because we borrowed 1 from the hundreds place, the 8 became a 7. 7 minus 2 is 5. And we're finished. Subtracting decimal numbers is much easier than taking candy from your little brother. After learning that the average price of each kilowatt hour is 12 cents, a little multiplication tells us that our seemingly nutty uncle is not so nutty after all. So I know that you may or may not know how to do multiplication at this point. Even if you haven't, that's fine. The point here is your uncle is saving more than $27 each month. He's saving $27.60. So in addition, geothermal energy is an alternative energy source and is renewable as long as the heat source lasts. Summary: subtraction is just a quick way of counting backwards. Subtracting decimal numbers is basically the same as subtracting whole numbers. Questions and practice problems. Here are some questions and practice problems. Okay, here's a real world or two real world practice problems. Now this ends lecture 4. Thanks for your attention. I'm looking forward to you joining me the next time for lecture 5. Have a great day.